to edubconversions.co.uk. My name is Lacey, and today we are asking the question, how can we improve the performance of our classic VW Type 2 camper? So this here is an engine out of the camper van that's behind me. This camper van is here. It's a early bay, so it's 1970, and it's a VW T2 camper, and it's come to us for the usual service that we perform here at eDub Conversions, which is electric conversions, and we'll get onto that in just a moment. But here is the original engine, fresh out of the vehicle. The customer, it had the vehicle running before it came to us, or nearly running. We got it kind of running again, took the engine out and put it on for sale, and the sale of the engine has gone against the cost of the conversion to electric. But as I said before, this is from a 1970 early bay camper, so it's commonly referred to as a 1600 engine. As it stands here, it's actually still connected to the gearbox. One of my jobs after this video is to disconnect those two, because it's just the engine that's sold, not the gearbox. And I might keep them because they're a bit like hen's teeth at the minute, just for other projects or for other conversions that we do which don't use a full gearbox and engine swap. But this particular model, so yeah, it's been removed, it's ready to go. And as you're probably familiar with these kind of engines, they were reasonably groundbreaking when they were first available in the late 60s and early 70s. There seems to have been obviously a variety of changes since this type of engine was first released by VW with the split screen camper vans and the Beetles that all had very similar rear-mounted air-cooled engines as this. And if you kind of follow the track, the way I understand it anyway, is there are certain little changes that are happening as things are evolving and as things are being slightly tweaked. But the way I see it is that this is kind of one of the last engines that still retains some of the original kind of Splitty and Beetle styles of performance. And it's kind of in the decade or so after this engine that things really started to ramp up and make some really significant changes within performance. So obviously with option number one, if you take really good care of these engines, or if you yourself are great at tinkering or servicing, or you know a guy, or maybe you are that guy who takes care of these engines, then they're really great. They run really well for the power they're capable of putting out. Obviously everything has a peak, everything has a ceiling that you can't break through, but they're still running, they still work fine. This one still works fine. But as you're aware, and as a lot of people are aware, they aren't as massively reliable for the average user. There's stories of the RAC parking up outside VW festivals because they're pretty sure that someone's going to need a call out, so they might as well get there in enough time. They're notoriously and I don't know whether, I wouldn't argue that they're unreliable in general. In fact, I think it's potentially kind of a recipe of their own success almost. One of the beautiful things about these engines and the way that they were fitted into the camper vans is that they could be very easily removed by one person and a trolley jack. So they had a few bolts at the front, they had a few bolts on the back, especially these early bay ones that didn't have anything over the center. And you could just get a trolley jack underneath it and take off the throttle cables and the clutch and the gear linkage and kind of drop it out on your own. What that meant is that suddenly there was an explosion of people that probably only got these vehicles because of that facility, but also were able to service it themselves, keep an eye on it themselves, upgrade it themselves, and that may have led to maybe a bit of overcompetence within the market of what people thought they could be getting into with this. But it has its history, it has its routine, and so just very quickly what some of those stats are of the VW engine. So in the book, this engine is capable of producing between 47 and 50 brake horsepower. It's 47 in some of the earlier models, 50 in some of the later models, depending on which version you'll get, but around 47 to 50 brake horsepower. And that is at 4,000 RPM. So its maximum RPM generally is around 4,500 RPM. That equates to about 88 miles per hour. So not lightning fast, but fast enough, in my opinion. If you're going 70 in one of these, it doesn't feel that great. But obviously that's all coming against as well. If you can get there, that power is not big enough, in my opinion, especially where we are north of England. The motorways are not flat. It'll take you a long time even to get to 70, let alone 88 miles per hour. So that RPM at 4,500 is the maximum. 4,000 RPM is where they classify their peak brake horsepower. As I said before, it's what's commonly referred to as a 1600, but statistically, It is a 1584 cc engine, 4-cylinder. So let's talk about torque for a second, and this engine is capable of giving out 82 at 3,000 RPMs. 82 is okay for this kind of engine, but you have to really try to get there. And obviously with everything else that's going on with the engine, that torque is nowhere near instantly available. You've got to have a kind of perfect storm of everything going on to be able to get that kind of power. And at the time, that was really great because it's pushing quite a big powered bus. But nowadays, that's a little bit outdated. The final thing I want to mention is about the weight. The weight of this unit with the gearbox attached is about 180 kilos in total. So as this currently sits, 180. If you wanted to combine the petrol tank, then the petrol tank is the unit itself filled with petrol. It's about 80 litres, so call it 80 kilograms. You're looking at then 260 kilos for the whole running gear, as it were, your engine, your gearbox, and your fuel. And I mention that because in the electric conversion context, that's an interesting full package to be aware of. Don't forget the fuel tank, it's a hefty bunch. So moving across to the alternative and answering that question of how do you improve the performance of your VW camper? The obvious way is to get rid of the engine altogether. And that's what we specialize in at edubconversions.co.uk. And this here is our latest electric motor that's available for the camper vans. This here is a Zonic 70. There are 3 flavors of Zonic, 70, 120, 180. We go for the Zonic 70, and I'll tell you the reasons why from the stats. You'll be able to see the differences in just a moment. But first and foremost, look at how tiny this thing is. Now, obviously, this isn't containing, there's a separate inverter piece, which is about that big. But because it's separate to this, we can kind of put that anywhere in the vehicle, which is great for packaging. And obviously, there's a battery pack itself. And I'll mention a couple of those things in this video, but we'll go more into that in a separate video because that's not necessarily to do with performance, which we want to focus on in this video. So the Zonic 70, the motor part is here and the gearbox part is here. So this is both. It is the motor and the gearbox. Now, the gearbox itself is a single speed reduction gearbox, which means there's 3 gears inside. You've got 1 gear at the start, effectively, where the motor is turning. It then goes into a reducer and then into the differential at the far end. And we connect our drive shafts to the side here that run out to the 2 rear wheels. And what's so wonderful about the packaging of this is that we can package it really far forwards in the camper vans, giving us loads more space for batteries. But this little power here, so talking about the performance comparison, it's this section that's comparable to this section in terms of the bit that's giving you the power. So the Zonic 70, going through some stats, the Zonic 70 actually has a peak of 96 brake horsepower. So compared to the 47 to 50 of the engine, 96, nearly double the brake horsepower equivalent is nestled within this little motor here, which is pretty incredible from what it's able to achieve. And with no sound, I couldn't actually find a decibel number against the engine. I wish I could, but I couldn't. So that means there isn't one because they're loud. They're loud. Silent, literally. That's as loud as you can get. That's as silent as you can get. So you just turn it on, it just goes. It's incredible. Torque. So we were talking before where torque, this has a value of 72, but that's at 0 RPM. So whereas you have to work up to get the torque out of this piece of machinery here, it has a torque straight from 0 RPM. And that's its kind of normal running torque. It actually has a peak of 175. So it's massively more powerful than what you're capable of. And also for those hill starts or starting up at traffic lights or just general maneuvering at low speeds, this is absolutely brilliant and really, really powerful. Next, we have weight. So we were talking about this particular unit here, which is about 180 kilos. By comparison, this one is 50. I could just about lift it on my own. I won't. 50 kilos versus 180. So nearly 4 times lighter for this smaller compact unit. And it's a ton more compact, so it's really hefty. But for that size and that weight, obviously then that allows you to have better weight distribution and obviously more weight allowance for your batteries. Another video, batteries taking up a lot more of that space. Final thing is RPM. This is untested at the moment in terms of what it can achieve from a miles per hour standpoint because we haven't quite worked out the ratios when it comes down to the drive shafts to the wheels. But if this ran at a maximum RPM of about 4,500, This runs at a maximum RPM of 14,000. So nearly 3 times as much RPM as a maximum. So that is kind of a non-existent figure to me, because even if you wanted to try and run the vehicle at that speed, I think everything would fall off before you got there. It's really not going to happen. But it's really important to say, because it's an important question we get asked a lot of, is what's the maximum speed of something like this? You don't need, it's too fast. That's all you need to know. Technically 3 times faster than 88 miles per hour. Anyway, not important. So this is a fantastic little unit, and we sell them here at eDub Conversions as part of our full electric conversion kits. We have all of the design work and the fabrication work to install these into your vehicle. So you would bring the vehicle to us here at eDub HQ in North Yorkshire in the UK. We would, if you've got an engine, we'd take it out for you. We can even help you sell it. And then we will take the motors, bolt them onto our existing subframe systems, which are available off the shelf, and install them into your vehicle. So it's a really straightforward way of making a massive improvement to your RPM and to your power. So it's obviously a reliability standpoint there as well, as we've talked about performance from this engine. But the fact that this motor can give you these kind of numbers and these stats about performance every time, pretty much, I'm not going to say always, never, pretty much every time you're going to get those performance figures. There's no maintenance or servicing required on here. It needs oil to be filled in the gearbox, but doesn't need kind of topping up of any kind of servicing oil. It's just lubrication oil to keep the system moving around nice and smoothly, and to keep it lubricated and cooled as well as it runs. And you've got liquid cooling on the system as well. It's pretty much zero maintenance. So you can get that reliability and that performance from the day you leave eDub Conversions with your newly converted camper van. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, then why not share it with people that you know? And I dare you to share it with some petrol heads who are really keen on these kind of engines, because I'd love to have conversations around those comparisons. We love these vehicles. That's why we're in this game, and we believe these vehicles could be available for another 40, 50 years' time of reliable running on the roads for people to really enjoy them. Also, if you've been watching it, we'd love you to like this video and subscribe to this video as well. And there's obviously tons of ways that you can share this, not just specifically to people, but why not share it on social channels as well. Thank you once again for watching. If you want any more details on our conversions, then head to edubconversions.co.uk and you can find all the information there. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.